Welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. If you wish to speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each item and submit to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the meeting. I will now call this meeting to order. Before we continue on with the meeting and the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to actually, if we can all have a minute of silence in remembrance of the victims in Israel. You can take 1 minute. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Councilmember Wolf to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. If everyone could please stand. Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Good evening. Councilmember Lopez?
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Here.
Councilmember Wolf?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Here.
Mayor Anstead?
Here.
Mayor Anstead, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We now have a report of closed session. I'll defer to City Attorney Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Direction was given to staff and no reportable action taken this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move into the approval of the agenda. Will the maker of the motion and a second to approve the agenda please state your names?
Councilmember Wolf, and I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Sylvester seconds.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber? Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you. There are no presentations this evening. We'll now move into Intergovernmental Special Purpose Committee departmental reports. Are there any reports from staff? No? Okay. Any reports from City Council? Councilmember Sylvester.
Yes, we had an emergency COG meeting to discuss sending a letter about the no bail. And because we hadn't discussed it with the City Council, I abstained from voting.
Thank you for informing us about that.
And we thank you for doing that.
Thank you. We'll now move to the public comments section. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, that you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Thank you. We'll now move to the consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Thank you. Are there any questions from City Council on the consent calendar? No?
I have a comment, though, well, go ahead, and I'll say it afterwards.
I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mayor Pro Tem Elise Buckley Weber.
And do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. Now I'll defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much, Councilmember,
The-
or
the
excuse
only
me,
com-
Mayor Pro Tem.
The only
Whipplewhite.
comment I wanted to make, in addition to everything else that the Finance Subcommittee and the finance leaders have done for this city, I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate that you recommended a transfer of $60,000 to the Open Space Fund. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Our next item is a discussion regarding the State Water Resources Control Board draft regulations. I will now defer to the Director of Public Works, City Engineer Jessica Forte for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, honorable council members. This evening, we've invited Craig Jones, the Resource Conservation Manager with Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, to join us to talk about conservation as a California way of life. This was an executive order by Governor Brown in 2018. Since that time, over the past 5 years, the State Water Resources Control Board has worked to create this a draft regulatory framework that was only recently shared with our water agencies throughout California. There are still some gaps in our understanding of the impacts of what the framework may what impacts it may have on our residents. And so we've asked Craig Jones to be here today to help us understand what the framework looks like and what requests our state water agencies are making of the State Water Resources Control Board to make it clearer and make sure that these really important conservation elements are enacted in a way that are achievable. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Craig.
Thank you, Jessica. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members. It's great to be with you, and thank you. I'm going to scoot my mic up just a bit. Thank you for this opportunity to really present. As Jessica mentioned, there's a lot going on at the state, and I don't have to tell you guys that. But I just want to say, by way of introduction, that as the Resource Conservation Manager, I just want to thank all of you, and especially the staff. You guys are leaders in this community. So I just want to give that credit where credit is due. So we're going to jump in. I just want to preface this presentation. This is about 200 pages of regs, and I have condensed this down as condensed as it can get. But I just want to preface by saying that if it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose, it's because you are. But we're just going to touch and just skim the surface tonight, but I really do appreciate your involvement and your willingness to have us here and just to partner with us. So quick background on kind of how we arrived here. As Jessica mentioned, we are in the rulemaking phase that really just started back in August. And really, this started back in 2009. You know, we kind of wrapped up that 20% by 2020, the X77 as we all knew it. And please understand too, if in the water world we use a lot of acronyms, so I'm just going to ask you to I'm going to apologize in advance. But 2018 was really the big step forward. Governor Brown did he did issue an executive order to make conservation a California way of life. And so just so you understand, as a district, we were very receiving and receptive of the framework regs. As a matter of fact, Las Virgenes was one of the first to kind of step out of rank and support them. They made a lot of sense. And again, we are conservationists by nature. We believe in saving water. And so I'll get into some of the more details. So what we'll kind of try to flesh out tonight is just kind of what's changed, and then really maybe just some of the impacts. So what DWR obviously is the Department of Water Resources, is the state agency that was tasked with effectively modeling, coming up with all the mechanisms to make this work. And then naturally, the State Water Resources Control Board is the governing body that implements the regulation. So from the pass off to the state board to now, and working with Department of Water Resources, there were a lot of changes that caught us off guard. And one of them was in 2022, this water supply strategy that the governor introduced it did add some additional components, which you'll see there at the bottom of this slide, reducing the urban water demand by 500,000 acre-feet by 2030. So now we get into really what we're talking about tonight with these regulations and what we're just going to overarchingly refer to as the urban water use objective. So the bulk of what we're going to discuss tonight, which is included in the objective, is residential indoor use, outdoor use, and then what we call CII landscapes, or that's commercial, institutional, industrial. We're not going to get into water loss and things like that. That is a separate regulation that's already been handled. So urban water use objective, just to be clear, and for those of you that do live in the community and might be a customer of the districts, you're well aware that we adopted a budget-based rate system. So you have a unique water budget, unique to your property and family size. So that's really the impetus behind these regulations, is that effectively every agency and water agency in California and supplier will have their own overarching budget, if you will. They're just using different terminology. So we'll have our own overarching objective, and it will be an aggregate whole of some of the pieces we're going to talk about in a moment. So again, we're not having to meet each standard individually, but it's an aggregate total. Quick look at the calculation and really what makes up this formula. So you can see underneath the standard there is really that aggregate, which includes, residential, indoor, outdoor. Obviously, we won't talk about water loss tonight. And then the implications of residential landscapes and the CII component. You're going to see an acronym called DIM, and it's Dedicated Irrigation Meter. So that's going to apply to CII accounts that might have a meter that's solely used for irrigation. And forgive me in advance if I put you to sleep.
Could you just explain what CII is?
Yes, it is, and it is an acronym for commercial, institutional, industrial. So it's kind of it's a catch-all for everything from industries to golf courses so it's in the water world. In our customer service side, our billing side, we kind of deal in meter classifications, right? So we have residential, we have multifamily, and then we'll have CII. So it could be everything from a laundromat to cities, yes, specifically to city accounts even. You have CII accounts, good point. Did that answer your question, council member? Perfect. So where are we in this framework? Again, I did touch on it, but I wanted you to see this slide because you can kind of see the aggregate components that we must get through by way of the statute for this rulemaking to be successful and achieved. And so really we've checked 2 of 9 boxes, if you will. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're waist deep in it now. So just some quick terminology. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have lots of acronyms. A couple that I'll point out that I think are of note. At the bottom left-hand side is the LEF, or the LEF. So that's a fancy term that means landscape efficiency factor. Now, if you do have a bill with us, we would effectively refer to that. That would be applicable on your bill to your plant factor. But this gets a little more into the weeds on the way that they've built out what this landscape efficiency factor. But just for the sake of tonight, when we mention that word or you see it, it really, the lower the number assigned is the less water that is effectively required for the landscape. The higher the number, the higher the multiplier, the more water is required to keep that landscape healthy and thriving. And again, you'll see SLA, special landscape areas. The MWELO is another big one, as you guys are aware of from your planning section, the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance, which has been in effect for many years. And then finally, just ETO. We're going to get an evapotranspiration. We're not going to get into it, but these regulations get very, very into the weeds on evapotranspiration, effective precipitation. We get very deep into it, which will influence that left factor. So residential indoor budget. This has already been effectively made statute by way of SB 1157. So just wanted you to see this, that we moved to 47 gallons per person per day for indoor usage starting in 2025. And then we ratchet down to 42 gallons per person per day by after 2030. So you can see how they would come up with that budget. It's a total population times the number of days in the year. Again, obviously, times the GPCD. And that gives us our aggregate residential indoor budget. So population will become a big deal for us going forward. Calculating the residential outdoor budget. This is a big long. I tried to make this simple. Again, I told you you'd see that left factor, but basically we're going to take a landscape efficiency factor. We're going to multiply it by the difference between effective precipitation and the reference evapotranspiration, coming up with that net ETO, times your landscaped area or your irrigable area, times a conversion factor to get an outdoor budget. So really just wanted to call out what really changed from all of our time and agency's time. I mean, literally almost 5-6 years spent with DWR modeling, coming up with, and a lot of agencies have already moved forward and spent money under the assumption that the standards would remain. But when the board took this over from DWR, that red box there, they added that. So we were fixed on this standard stopping at a 0.63, but they propose that it ratchets down even further to a 0.55 for outdoor budget. Really quickly, so this is the commercial, institutional, industrial standard. This gets really into the weeds. We're not going to do that again tonight, but this is where we've had a lot of challenges, where we've been really pushing back on the state. As you can see, they've kind of divvied it out into two separate regulations. One is standards-based for accounts with dedicated irrigation meters, and the other one is performance-based measures for the actual account for the building. And it gets really into the weeds. So again, the other proposal that the board made that was deferential to what we started with was this actually goes down to a 0.45 by 2035. Again, these would be commercially irrigated properties. And you can see that, you know, some of the things that will fall on suppliers here would be, we will have to effectively calculate all these budgets for these accounts with DIMS. There'll be a lot of potential work in terms of really trying, again, I guess I'll just stop there because there's a lot to talk about. So from a compliance standpoint, you know, really this breaks down in the CII world from a water use standard or performance measures, as I mentioned. So their proposals are that you would meet an equivalent conversion, or you would impose or propose in lieu technologies. So some of the things we're working on is trying to help them see that we've already implemented things like advanced meters. So we've already spent, the district spent, you know, almost $12 million, you know, replacing 21,000 meters. That comes with a customer-facing portal that you can now see your hourly interval data. You can sign up for emails and text messages for leak alerts, right? So we're trying to make sure that this gets infused. And then there's a whole nother section on variances. So really the way the board is proposing that anytime, as an example, let's say for existing pools, they actually want to treat pools with less than a 1.0 landscape efficiency factor. Typically, as you guys know, pools, there's a high rate of evapotranspiration, and they want to treat them like plants. So in effect, what they're saying is each year, if we require more water to account for that, we would have to actually apply for it annually in the form of a variance and wait for the state to approve it. And so we think that's a little bit challenging for a number of reasons. And then there is the special landscape areas. Obviously, these 1.0 factors will apply for like a baseball field. So they have made provision for public spaces like athletic fields and so forth. Now, they did, thankfully, and we had to fight to put this back into the reg, but we did fight to have what's called a bonus incentive, because as you all know, we are moving fast and swiftly with our IPR project, our pure water project. So thankfully, we have been able to put this back into the reg to get effectively credits for our potable reuse project. Keep in mind, that's the challenge, right? As we ratchet down on that indoor use over time, I mean, that was a volume of water that we were planning for in the potable reuse project. So that investment is for forever, into perpetuity. And even in the proposed regulations, they only give us, originally they only proposed this incentive to be temporary. And our argument was, well, the project's not temporary, right? So anyway, what happens next? Last week, we had a formal hearing in Sacramento, and I'll report out to you that there was an overwhelming response from water suppliers across the state. The meeting started at 9 a.m. and went till 9 p.m. There was, with about 8 hours of that public comment. So needless to say, they heard our concerns. So the next big piece on the agenda going forward is this October 17th date, where they've asked for a formal comment. And we're so grateful that the city of Agoura is engaged and willing to come alongside us. So that's the next big milestone. And then obviously we're going to spend the next effective year really hopefully working in tandem with board staff and the board itself to hopefully come up with a rulemaking that we can live with. And I do want to say that we've been working very closely with Aqua, CMUA, water reuse. We have red lines, so we're not just complaining and saying this doesn't work. We're actually giving them a very articulate cut at what the reg should say, and we've spent hundreds and thousands of hours as agencies in these water use efficiency groups really mulling through this stuff. So in closing, I got a couple more slides, bear with me here. Just, overarching concerns that we've brought up. We have extreme concerns with the timeline. As an example, we are required by January 1 to report on these rules that aren't even effective yet. And unfortunately, that's by statute. So that's our problem. We've got plans for that. But they just are highly complex. And I think the big thing is aside from the administrative reporting burdens that really don't turn into actual water savings, our big concern that we vocalized to them, to the board this past week was the implications that this will require more staffing, the rate increases, and the disproportionate effect that will have. So again, feasibility and affordability are kind of the top of the list. Now, this is another component that the state board has by way of these rules, is an enforcement. So again, just wanted to, obviously we as the water supplier will be impacted. You, the end user, will not. So that's kind of the way this works, is that if it doesn't work out, we're on the hook for it. I just wanted you to see, though, that there is, and we don't really know what their true intentions are in terms of actual enforcement. So, again, just want to close with, this concept of feasibility. We're working feverishly to develop meaningful standards. and the ones that we can, again, just to be very clear, just in summary, effectively what these regulations propose and what's different and why we kind of all took a step back and kind of took a big gulp when the board presented them in the spring of this year was that what DWR proposed, the focus has always been on new development going forward, and that's kind of the MWELO approach. So what these regs look to do is effectively impose on every existing landscape in California. So effectively what we're talking about is every single yard in California will need to do immediately a native transformation with very, high precision irrigation. And so, naturally, in an ideal world, we're in favor of that. But as practitioners who have been implementing programs for the last 30 years, we can't force people to do these things, right? So I just wanted you to understand that that's the challenge we have as a water supplier and a retailer, is we can provide the programs and we do encourage it, but we cannot force it. Now, and I just want to, because I don't want to close on such a solemn note, because I do want to encourage you that as the Las Virgenes, we're very poised for success, and we consider ourselves, a leader in the water world. We're one of the very few in California that have a budget-based rate system. We've implemented AMI. We have a potable reuse project. We have, just in the last 7 years, we have $16 million in grant funding that we've received for conservation-related things and projects. And so just want to encourage you that, and that's honestly one of my concerns, these smaller agencies across California that don't have and aren't positioned, they're going to be in trouble, and we know that. So thank you. Want to really just extend my heartfelt thanksgiving to allow me to come tonight and take time out of your precious time. Thank you for engaging in the process. And just this last slide, if you are having trouble sleeping at night, you can go to the CalWEP framework. There's a link there that I provided, and it is a comprehensive, and I'm happy to share that with Jessica. For folks who really want to dig in deeper to this, happy to share information, because I think that's our heart. We just want to get the word out. You know how this is. These things take place in a vacuum, and then their legislation, and then the public outcry comes. So we want to be engaged. So with that, I'm going to just open it up for questions.
Thank you.
If I may, before deliberation, I also wanted to say the city staff's recommendation on this would not necessarily be for the city council to give specific input to the State Water Resources Control Board. It's more a letter that what we're recommending is that the city council consider submitting a letter saying that we support what the water agency's engagement has been with the State Water Resources Control Board, and that as a city, we would like the board to take the feedback from the state water agencies seriously and into account as they finalize the regulations.
Thank you. Thank you for that that clarification. Appreciate it. Before we move on to public comment, does any council member have questions of staff after that great presentation?
Yeah, I'll start off. Thank you, Craig. That was great. Can you just summarize kind of what these regulations, if they go into effect, would mean for Las Virgenes and for Agoura Hills? Like, what does it mean for our ratepayers? If you could kind of explain that, that's one question.
Yeah, and it's a great question, because again, I think because we're in this nebulous state of we don't have them yet, we're not even sure to a great extent, in our conversations with Charlotte Ely at the board staff in charge of this effort, when we have back and forth with her, there's a lot of interpretive response where we say, oh, so this means this, and she's like, oh, well, I didn't realize you would see that. So to answer your question, though, Jeremy, the concern would be, naturally, if we raise rate, the first one would be rates, and naturally that impacts your customers. We might, we would need to obviously be more inclusive in terms of, again, making sure that you guys know the changes. We might even need, when it comes to best management practices and lieu technologies, it could even mean slowly they want a CII account. Maybe they have what's called a mixed use meter, and they want, well, if that mixed use meter is servicing a building and a landscape, effectively we think their end game is that they want us to implement making sure they get another meter, a dedicated irrigation meter. So that's going to be cost to your customers. Again, it's a very loaded question, Jeremy, and I wish I had a more thorough answer, but I think we're trying to get in front of it by saying most of the work is going to be on the hook for us, but naturally you are our customers, so we want to make sure that you're seeing this coming as well. I know that didn't answer your question.
No, that helped. Yeah, I mean, yeah. The other thing is, it's kind of more of a comment, but you mentioned, like, if these regulations go into effect, every home would have to, be a native garden, which is something I know the city supports and the council supports. But isn't it kind of true that it would be more than that? It would be like xeriscape. Like, we would need every home to really have mostly rock formation.
Well, and that's a great point, and that's one of our concerns, right? Even with rebates, we see a spectrum of, outcomes, right? So the concern that Jeremy brings up is that, I mean, if you can't afford to do it and you just need to check the box, and you might just go lava rock or astroturf, and that's not our objective. So that is a grave concern. And how that impacts, folks that are the elderly, that are on fixed incomes, right? How do we proportion this, equitably?
And then the last thing is, we talked about the variance for our pure water plant. We would have to apply for that every year, correct? And that becomes burdensome and just not realistic.
That is correct. I mean, we will literally have to make a case for it annually so to that point, we have an urban water management plan that we produce every 5 years for the state. We send it in. It takes them 2 to 3 years to get back to us and say it's approved. So we're very concerned that they want to, create, and that's been their overarching stance going forward, is they really don't want to bend and give us what we want in terms of, loosen these standards. They're thinking, let's do this through variances. So yes, that is a grave concern that we have.
Thank you for being here and talking to us about this. And we all support water conservation, but it's not realistic what's going into effect. So thank you for talking to us about it.
Any other questions from staff or from council? Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you for that. My head is exploding with all the acronyms. Definitely get that. I'll save some of my comments for when we wrap up, but my question is, might almost be more for our staff. My question really was going to be, how can we partner with you to make sure that, we're all on the same page, really representing the voice of the residents and businesses, that this is just so far over the average person's, ability, time, everything to be in the weeds about. And Ms. Forte, you answered that a little bit at the end in terms of letters and things like that. So my question is really maybe more to staff, which is, are some of these things covered in our legislative/regulatory platform? Because what I want to, it's almost like we have these kinds of discussions with housing where we want to, maintain a little bit of that local control. We want to be able to weigh in on our specific situation, because one size does not fit all. And to Councilmember Wolf's point, yes, we all agree that we're all trying to move into the same direction, but property rights are so strict, so firm in this country. It's kind of putting us in the middle of a very complicated situation. So I want to be able to react and be nimble to be on the same page as the district. So I guess my question is really, what do we have in place to be able to do this quickly if needed?
I think to your original part of your question is, our legislative platform does cover water quality issues, preserving water resources, and so If there's a legislative action or a bill or anything, we can take immediate action on that because the council's already provided us direction. If it's enforcement of rules and those kind of things, we would probably need to go to a subcommittee. We can do that fairly quickly, and I think we can turn that around. I think the council's really responsive in meeting with staff, so we can make that a priority if something comes up to make sure that happens quickly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe on a different time, we can talk about how we can support the regulatory piece of it, because obviously we have to follow the laws and all of that, but we want our voice to be heard in that process as well. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jones, when did DWR turn it over to SWRCB?
It was effectively in 2022.
That's what I thought you said, but I was surprised, so I wasn't sure. And Ms. Forte, you kind of addressed this because I was thinking, shouldn't our letter, if the council wants to send one, be more specific about what our concerns are? I do agree it's probably better but we do say in here, we urge the board to take the time necessary to address ACWA's comments. Is that all we're asking for, is them to take time to address them, or is?
At this stage, the written comments, if the city council did determine that they wanted to submit that letter, is due on October 17th. And so from the time that this really landed in August until now, to have like a really good look at it and provide a more granular letter to the council, it just wasn't feasible. I do think that we could beef up the letter if that was the will of the council. I mean, this really doesn't give us an understanding of what the capital cost associated with ripping out turf that's not functional may be. Like, is this even something that the city could afford to do? Being a really environmentally forward city, even that, if I'm not certain, we could say, hey, we need $500,000 worth of general funds or whatever. We have no idea what that number is. We have no idea what the extent of that will be for our parks or our public landscaping. So what it means for plant establishment. Are we held to these budgets as a city? I don't think that the district has had a chance to really understand how that would be implemented. So we really don't have the kind of understanding of what this regulation means for our district to be able to even dissect that for you at this point. Otherwise, I would have given you more information in that letter.
Thank you. And then my last question, Mr. Jones, is that one of your objections or concerns, not objection, but one of your concerns was that all of a sudden the board was going out to 2035. I mean, you don't want to be doing this again, right? Shouldn't we be going out to 2035? Or is your complaint not that we're going to 2035, but that we don't know what that means?
Yeah, no, not so much the 2035, but the additional piece of the left factor gets smaller. So the mindset is that, and let me just be clear, because it is a great question. The basic premise is, if you look at the MWELO standard, again, it's new development. They're design standards. What we see in the field is not what there's. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. I could reference, Santa Margarita Water District, who have a team of data analysts. They've got incredible numbers. They know how all their landscapes are performing. And in their best case scenario, they're performing between a 0.7 and a 0.9. So we're just saying that they're design standards, they're not the practical in the field because of all the variables. So forgive me if it's not so much the time, it's kind of a kick the can that's not feasible to begin with. So it doesn't matter how much time you give us. And one other thing, just to go back to your previous question, just to give you some extra confidence, is Aqua, the letter that there is very robust. So by acknowledging that, it's going to speak volumes.
Great. Thank you. You've answered my questions.
Councilmember
Yes,
Sylvester.
I have a question because I'm a bit overwhelmed by some of this information. So you're saying that every individual home is going to have drought-tolerant landscaping. So are we going to be telling our residents, including myself, I have a dog, we have grass in our backyard, so our dog can be outside and run in just that one area. Is that going to be prohibited?
No, I'll just short answer, by the district, no. I think the collective argument is that when we do these numbers in terms of staying under an overall budget, that's effectively what they're driving at. I'm here to tell you that we, as the supplier, are not going to come and say, hey, you have grass. But that, I mean, again, we've brought those concerns up. So, I mean, your point is well made, and we've been asking the same question.
Yes, because, I mean, we want our residents to buy into this, but it has to be
Yes.
something that they can live with.
Yes.
So maybe if you had the drought tolerance in the front, you could have some grass for your animals in the back.
Yes, and for the record, just for the district's sake, we are not, sometimes when we get into conservation conversations, there seems to be a war on turf, and that's not, as a resource conservation manager, that's not that's not what where we're at. But where it makes sense that people can make slow implemental changes to, because we know that 70% of your water use is applied to your landscape. So that's the overarching argument.
And do you think we will move to a 2-meter system for each individual household for indoor and outdoor?
Say that first part again.
Do you think we will move to a 2-meter system for our indoor and outdoor?
No. For residential, no.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jones, I think I have one or two questions I want to ask you. One of the things that you mentioned, and I think this seems to be where you were going with most of the presentation, is that really if you had to boil it down to your objections, that some of these requirements aren't feasible. I guess I just heard you use that word earlier. Am I correct on that?
100%.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of whenever you send your response, a lot of the response is going to be, hey, these regulations aren't feasible for us to implement.
That has been the overwhelming response with very granular detail.
Got it.
Where we redline the actual regs to say, why don't you make it say this?
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That helped a lot. Thank you. Right. All right, we'll now move to public comment. This section is reserved for public comment. If you wish to speak, please submit a public comment card to the city clerk. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our city clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted.
Okay. Does any council member have any further questions or comments before we move on to deliberations?
I just have a comment. I want to thank Craig for being here and getting to work with Craig. I know we're in good hands, and we have the district looking out for our best interest on this very, very complex issue. So thank you for coming here and talking to us about it.
So we'll now move on to deliberations, and I might as well start with you, Councilmember Wolf, since you just asked. You're fine. Just start with you on any comments for the deliberations.
I can make all findings and appreciate the conversation.
You got it. Thank you. Councilmember Lopez.
Well, I too want to thank you for coming. I always say that, as we sit in this seat as laymen and women, there's probably nothing more complicated than water. The science of water, the technology of water, the financing of water, and then of course the political and regulatory side of things is just a whole animal. So it's one of the most complicated topics that we face, and it's hard for those of us that are really not in the industry, and so we rely so much on you and so much on our water district to explain to us, to advocate for us, to help us converse with our residents about this. And so I really, I can't thank you enough for for being here and for explaining and really for advocating for us and for our residents. I think you hit the nail on the head that, we can all hope for pie in the sky, but, both customer behavior and, financial restraints and all of these things, and property rights, all of those things are battles that we have. And so, I just want to agree with Councilmember Wolf that we're very thankful to have you, and, I support your efforts and again, want to reiterate that we and our staff are here to help with that message. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll move on. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Thank you. I don't have much to add other than what my other council members have said, that in all the time that I've been on the council, the water district has proved to be reliable and efficient and very conscious of the environment and conservation. So I support sending this letter. I obviously don't understand the technology of all of it, but you've done a good job of narrowing it down to I came away from the staff going, well, what are our concerns? But now I have a better idea, and it's most likely the infeasibility of it, and I hope that you can convince the water board to make some changes so that it will be better for our community. But I do have faith in Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. So I'm going to keep going with that until I'm proven wrong. Thank you.
Councilmember Sylvester.
I agree with my fellow council members. And the one caution I would add is going forward, we have to get buy-in from our residents. And so that's education and explaining to them why certain things are happening. We don't want them to panic. We don't want them to resist it, because we have to do this for the future. But it has to be done with the right education for our community. Thank you.
I would think on my comments, it would be, I think that if the local experts don't think that something's feasible, then I'm inclined to believe that, and am all on board to send a letter supporting that as well going forward. So with that, I will now call for a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the comment letter to the State Water Resources Control Board on behalf of the City Council. Do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber moves to recommend to staff and to have the mayor sign the letter. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Wolf, I'll second.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval, 5-0.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from the staff before I move forward with closing? Okay. And then I know we have some comments from city council members, but before we do that, I'd like to just say a few words on somebody that I would like to try to close the meeting on behalf of tonight, and that is Ellen Wool. And I will make some comments that I have prepared, but I look forward to hearing a lot of the other comments of the city council members and Mayor Pro Tem. So I wanted to just kind of share a biography that I have from Ellen. So I wanted to share a few words about a vibrant member of our community who passed away last week. Ellen Louise Wool was born on May 30th, 1934 in Detroit, Michigan. She moved with her family to California when she was a year and a half old. Her parents owned a baby and children's store in the Fairfax district called Kittytown. When Ellen was old enough, she jumped in and began to work there. She grew up in Los Angeles, attended Fairfax High School, LA City College, and Woodbury College. Ellen married her love, Victor, who served in the Army in Korea back in 1954, and he was discharged. They had 4 daughters, Bonnie, Nancy, Janice, and Laura. They raised their girls, and after all these years, Ellen still resided in Agoura Hills. Ellen was very involved volunteer while raising her girls. She served on the PTA as a Girl Scout leader, on the Foundation for Junior Blind as a volunteer for local community organization, and as a docent. She also was very creative and always made sure that her girls were exposed to the arts. The girls say that growing up with their mom every day was a craft day. She had a love for music and the theater. She always enjoyed singing theater musical songs while the girls did their chores. She sewed, baked, and was an amazing cake decorator and would eventually teach cake decorating classes in our recreation program. Ellen was involved in lots of Agoura Hills groups and committees. She was in the community concert band, served on the senior advisory committee, was a docent at Ray's Adobe Historical Site, served on the Ray's Adobe Committee even this year, and she took it upon herself to get involved with emergency services by joining CERT. Most notably, Ellen was an amazing artist. Being a watercolorist extraordinaire, she painted the most beautiful landscapes and natural scenery. It was only fitting, as she was the ray of sunshine to so many, that Ellen passed away just before Ray's Adobe Days on October 4th. She was loved and supported by her sisters, Dina and Tricia, her 4 daughters, son-in-laws, her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Ellen was your biggest cheerleader and had an unforgettable smile. She will be greatly missed by many. On behalf of the City Council, I would like to extend our sincerest condolences to her family and friends and respectfully request the City Council adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Ellen Louise Wool. I will now ask other council members for any comments. And Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I didn't know we were doing that tonight, and Ellen meant so much to me personally that I'm literally not prepared. And I believe that she is due the honor of me being prepared to make those comments. So I will come back around another day, another celebration. I went to the funeral with Amy Jones Brink, and the whole way home, we have a number of wonderful ideas that she needs to talk to the city manager about. So I will come back around. She was a fabulous woman, a very important volunteer for this city, and I will share that at a later time. Thank you.
Other council members? Okay, Councilmember Lopez.
I'll just add that Ellen was a neighbor of mine. She lived around the corner from me. And so, I've been in my house for 25 years, and she's been a staple of our neighborhood as long as I can remember. I think we all want to be like Ellen in our pursuits. She was such a dedicated volunteer and never gave up on that, literally until the very end. She would sit in her walker and sit in front of the Reyes Adobe Days and be at our senior meetings, and we should all serve our community in the same heart of service that Ellen had. So we will miss her very much and send our deepest condolences to her family. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from City Council members? Okay. The next regular City Council meeting will be held at 6.
Can we have
I'm sorry.
general comments?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I would just like to thank all the staff and our city manager for a successful Reyes Adobe Days. You worked so hard, and I know the community really enjoyed it, so thank you so much.
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley.
Thank you. So I am prepared for these comments. So I just want everyone that's here and everyone who's watching to know that I personally, Elise Buckley Weber, stand with Israel and its right to exist. I stand against terrorism. We are all entitled to our own political beliefs and can still be unified against the brutal rape and killing of innocent people. When 9/11 happened, we lived in England. We weren't with our families and our communities in the US. The British and other foreigners all throughout England would stop us at the pub in the middle of the street and tell us that they stood with the United States of America. It meant the world to us and to have their support and their acknowledgement. So regardless of your religion, race, or political beliefs, please join me in standing against evil and standing up for the goodness of humanity. And may there be peace in this world soon.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Wolf.
I would like to echo the Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber and unequivocally say that I, Councilmember Jeremy Wolf, stand with Israel. October 7th, this Saturday, was the deadliest day for for Jews since the Holocaust. In 70 years, we lost more Jewish lives in one day than in 70 years since the Holocaust. And this unprecedented attack on human dignity, it's unacceptable. I appreciate, Mayor, thank you for starting off the meeting with the moment of silence. City of Agoura Hills has a strong, vibrant Jewish and Israeli community. And while we can feel helpless sometimes while we're a world away, I want the residents of Agoura Hills to know that we stand with you. We stand with the Jewish community, we stand with the Israeli community, and we stand with everyone who represents peace in the world. The city has already shown our commitment to the Jewish community by passing a resolution in March standing up to anti-Semitism. These next few weeks are going to be extremely challenging for the Jewish community, the Israeli community, and I want our residents to know that we support you and we will do everything we can. So thank you.
Councilmember.
Thank you. I have tried for days to put my feelings into writing, and so I'm very, I admire that you both could do that more or less, because I've been absolutely speechless in just unable to put the despair into words, which is not like me. I usually have a lot to say, but the horror, the roller coaster of feelings, horror, anger, despair, sadness, and there hasn't been a lot of hope lately, which may or may not know that the national anthem of Israel is the translation of that means the hope, and we're not feeling a lot of that these days. But I want to join my council members in professing my unequivocal support for Israel. I also want to support the idea that the innocent people in this area of the world are suffering so greatly, which is just absolutely unimaginable and has to stop soon. I want to thank our local Chabad communities, not only in Agoura Hills in the Conejo Valley, the Chabad of the Conejo. We had a service on Monday night that they organized with a lot of the Chabads in the area to gather together and really profess our support. And it was not just Agoura Hills, it was Chabad of Westlake and Thousand Oaks and Camarillo. People of all faiths were there, and it was really important. So I want to thank our Chabad for being so welcoming to everyone in the community. But our interfaith community has come out as well. In fact, I did write down, not my words, but I wrote down a message that one of my friends in one of the local mosques sent me, and he said how pained he was, and said, let's join together and in one voice unequivocally condemn unprovoked acts of violence, and that peace may prevail. And I don't think we could say it any better than that. So thank you again for the moment of silence. And I want to close my remarks in saying that today I had to write a very hard email for my day job from someone who lost a relative in the attacks. And it was such a tough email to write. There's no words, like I said. But one of the things I did say is that if anyone out there does have family members or any situation that they need help with in Israel, our government is here to help. We have a wonderful Congresswoman, Julia Brownlee, in our area, and if anyone needs help with repatriation or anything, any concern, we can help you connect with their office. So please do not hesitate to reach out if anyone in our community needs any assistance with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I cannot speak as eloquently as you did, Elise, but just know that I think everybody around the world is standing with Israel right now. I mean, it's unbelievable. So we're with you.
And I also want to echo those remarks. And I enjoyed being invited to and attending the ceremony at the Chabad here and remembering the victims in Israel. And And so I also stand with Israel on that as well. And I hope things get better as soon as possible. So I will close tonight's meeting in memory of the victims in Israel and also remembering Ellen Wool as well. So the next regular city council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, October 25th, 2023 in the council chambers of the Civic Center. The Civic Center is located at 30001 Ladyface Court, Agoura Hills, California. Will the maker of a motion and a second to adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of the victims in Israel and Ellen Wool, please, do I have a motion and a second?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Mayor
Thank you. Do I
Pro
have a
Tem
second?
Buckley Weber seconds the motion.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead?
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you. This meeting is now adjournment.